What if I told you that what was once celebrated as the greatest revolution in human communication is now being quietly abandoned? Social media, created to bring people together, is being neglected by millions. And the reason isn't just fashion or boredom. It's something much deeper, a collective awakening that questions the way we live, think, and even how we perceive ourselves. Welcome. This is your moment to pause in the midst of the hustle and bustle, a space to look within and reflect on what really matters. Take a deep breath, stay with me until the end, and let's walk this journey together. Today you'll find out why so many people are leaving social media, even if discreetly. And by understanding this silent movement, you might also notice signs that you're ready to change your relationship with the digital world. And since you're here, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like it, and turn on notifications, so you don't miss any of the upcoming sessions. When social media was born, there was a collective enchantment. It seemed like we were facing a new era. Suddenly, the whole world fit inside a screen. It was possible to meet up with distant friends, share simple moments in life, and feel, for the first time, that we were all connected. At first, everything seemed innocent. The first posts were poorly taken photos, short phrases, invitations to family parties. There was joy in simplicity. Each like was like a note saying, "I remember you, I care about you." My heart raced with each new notification, but there was an invisible detail that no one saw. The brain was being trained. Every like, every comment, every share triggered a little dose of dopamine, the same substance linked to pleasure, addiction, and compulsion. It was like receiving small rewards, but never enough to satisfy. An endless banquet, but made of empty plates. And so, what started out as a bridge began to turn into a prison. Screen time was increasing without anyone noticing. Live conversations were decreasing, the pauses of silence disappeared. And little by little, it was no longer you who controlled the network. It was the network that controlled you. And it was at this point that the shine began to fade. The promise of freedom turned out to be a trap in disguise, and what seemed like fun began to bring weight, pressure, and even pain. But that was just the first sign, an early symptom of something much bigger that was yet to come. Social networks are no longer just communication tools. They have become carefully lit shop windows where each person displays not who they are, but who they wish to appear to be. And that's when the invisible poison was born. Comparison. You wake up feeling good, feeling grateful for what you have. But just opening the feed makes that feeling evaporate. Someone has achieved what you don't yet have. Another seems to be in a perfect relationship. Another one displays trips, cars, bodies, smiles edited down to the last line of pixels. And suddenly, what you had no longer seems enough. Oprah Winfrey teaches us that comparison is the silent thief of peace. And perhaps that is the best description, because the comparison doesn't scream, it doesn't make noise. She whispers softly, eroding confidence, erasing the joy of what has already been achieved. And the cruelest thing is that what you see is not real. It's just an edited, polished version, calculated to look perfect. But the brain does not distinguish between illusion and reality. He reacts as if that perfection were real. And every time you compare yourself, you activate a cycle of scarcity. I don't have enough, I'm not enough, I'm not living enough. It's like drinking salt water in the desert. You think you're quenching your thirst, but the more you drink, the thirstier you feel. The result is an emotional prison, invisible but suffocating. And this weight doesn't just affect self-esteem. It affects choices, relationships, the way you see the world. It silently shapes your behavior, making you chase after something you may never truly need. This was the second symptom, deeper than the first, a sign that something was wrong. And when comparison combined with mental fatigue, one of the greatest emotional crises of our digital age was born. There's a hidden price to spending hours scrolling. It's not just time that slips through our fingers. It's something much deeper, an invisible wear and tear that gradually drains your vital energy. A price that is not measured in money, but in mental clarity, focus, and even emotional health. Each notification triggers an internal alarm in the brain, an alert that forces you to change focus, even if only for a few seconds. And the more often you change focus, the more confused and tired your brain becomes. It's like asking a runner to stop and start again every 10 meters. There comes a time when he gives up, not for lack of strength, but because of exhaustion. Neuroscience has already proven our brains were not designed to handle an excess of stimuli in such a short period of time. Every feed, every story, every short video is like a tiny chemical spark, triggering dopamine and cortisol in sequence. The result is a vicious cycle of pleasure and anxiety. You check your phone for no reason, feel relief for a moment, but soon emptiness comes, and with it, the need to look again. What once seemed like just fun has turned into a silent compulsion. Sleeping has become a challenge because the mind no longer knows how to switch off. Focusing on a single task is nearly impossible because the brain has been trained to jump from distraction to distraction. Even the silence, which should be natural, now feels uncomfortable. It's as if the emptiness is unbearable, and so you run back to the noise. But this fatigue isn't just mental, it's physical. Have you ever noticed how after a long time on social media, your body feels heavy? Eyes burn, posture drops, mood plummets. It's no coincidence. It's neurological overload. It's your brain screaming for rest, asking to breathe. The paradox is cruel. You go online to relax, but you leave more exhausted than when you arrived. It's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. You think you're nourishing yourself, but with every sip, you're actually dehydrating yourself further. And when this pattern repeats itself for days, months, years, the result appears in every aspect of life. Relationships suffer because real presence is replaced by divided attention. The work loses quality because the focus is dispersed. And even your sense of identity weakens because the mind no longer knows how to distinguish what it truly desires from what it has been induced to desire. This is the point at which many begin to ask themselves, is it worth it? Is all this time spent really bringing anything of value? Or are we just mortgaging our peace in exchange for seconds of distraction? Have you ever felt that your mood changes after spending too much time on your cell phone? Leave your comments below. Your experience could be the key to helping others recognize themselves in the same cycle. And it is precisely in the face of this overload that a natural response arises. A silent, almost invisible movement, but one that grows every day, the impulse to disconnect, an inner desire to get away from the noise and regain lost clarity. And it is about this disconnection movement that we will talk about in the next point. Something curious has started to happen in recent years. Without any major announcements, fanfare, or public statements, many people simply disappeared from social media. It was not an organized movement. It was not an official protest. It was something much more intimate, a silent choice. First came the short breaks, called digital detoxes. Some said, "I'm going to be away for a week just to rest." Then these pauses became longer, and in many cases, they became permanent. When anyone realized that profile no longer existed, and they weren't just ordinary people, celebrities, business people, and influencers, those who relied most heavily on social media, began publicly declaring their desire to step away. Some talked about mental health, others from tiredness, and many from a search for meaning. What seemed unthinkable years ago has started to become normal, living outside the digital showcase. Carl Jung said that silence is not emptiness, but a fertile space where the mind can finally hear itself. Maybe this is what so many people are looking for, a place where the noise of notifications gives way to the voice of intuition, where external validation gives way to reconnecting with oneself. This silent movement is almost invisible to those who remain connected. But for those who try it, it is liberating. It's like breathing fresh air after years of being stuck in a windowless room. It's like rediscovering the pleasure of walking slowly, without feeling the obligation to record every step to show the world. And the more people choose to disconnect, the more this gesture stops being strange and starts to be admired. What was once seen as escape is now perceived as courage. Courage to say no to excess. Courage to choose quality over quantity. courage to seek real presence in place of fragmented attention. But this movement is not just about absence, it's also about reunion, because when leaving the networks, many discover something that seemed lost, the simplicity of real life. And it is about this return to the essentials that we will talk next. When someone decides to step away from social media, they don't just find silence, find space. A space that was previously filled with endless feeds and incessant notifications. And in this space, something new begins to emerge, the rediscovery of the essential. Suddenly, little things have value again. A coffee taken without rushing, without the need to photograph the cup. A walk in the late afternoon, feeling the wind on your face without the obligation to record the sunset in stories. Conversations that don't need to be published because they are already complete in themselves. It's as if life, which was previously always fragmented into posts and likes, regains its wholeness. The hours seem longer, time denser, and what once seemed banal turns out to be extraordinary. Hearing a child's laughter, smelling food on the stove, looking into someone's eyes without a screen between the two. Oprah always said that purpose is not in great deeds, but in small gestures that make sense to the soul. And that's precisely what many rediscover when they leave the networks, the purpose hidden in everyday life. It's not about accumulating more, showing more, proving more. It's about being present, truly present, in what already exists. This return to the essentials also has an invisible effect. It strengthens the mind. Because when you learn to nourish yourself with real experiences, the need for digital validation loses strength. The peace that comes from within begins to replace the anxiety that came from outside. And what seemed impossible, living well without posting everything, turns out to be not only possible but deeply satisfying. But this transformation doesn't stop there. It paves the way for something even more surprising, the prosperity that comes when you choose depth over superficiality. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next point. There is a dangerous myth that social media has helped spread, that prosperity is measured in visible numbers. More followers, more likes, more engagement. As if life were a scoreboard and each person's worth could be calculated in digital metrics. But those who truly prosper know that the truth is different. Napoleon Hill already taught that true wealth comes first from the mindset and not from what appears on the outside. And that's why so many people who leave the networks discover something unexpected. Prosperity isn't about showing off, it's about substance. Life outside of social media brings a kind of focus that is almost impossible within it. Without the constant noise of notifications, there is room for discipline. And discipline, as Hill said, is the silent bridge between idea and achievement. It's when you stop spending energy trying to appear and start investing energy in actually being. Think about how many projects, businesses, or dreams have been postponed because the mind was busy showing results instead of building them. How many people live trapped in a race to appear prosperous, but still have an empty bank account and a restless heart? Disconnection brutally reveals this paradox. When you don't have to prove anything to anyone, you finally have the energy to achieve something real. And here's a powerful irony. Many of the people who left the networks found more prosperity than before, because the absence of distractions opened up space to create, plan, work in silence, and reap real rewards. Recognition is no longer instantaneous, but has become lasting. And wealth stopped being measured in likes and started being measured in peace, time, and purpose. Now I ask you, do you believe it is possible to prosper more without relying on social media? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your reflection may inspire others to look beyond appearances. And it is at this point that the greatest irony of all arises. Even away from the networks, true connection does not disappear. On the contrary, it becomes stronger. And it is about this new form of connection, invisible but real, that we will talk about next. When someone leaves social media, the first impression is one of loss of contact, updates, visibility. But soon a surprising discovery emerges. True connection doesn't disappear. She just changes places. Off-screen, new forms of bonding begin to emerge. Small communities, face-to-face meetings, longer, deeper conversations. There are no algorithms, There are no filters, there is no pressure to always be online. What exists is presence. And presence, in times of digital excess, has become an almost revolutionary act. It's funny, the less you expose yourself, the more authentic you become. The less you try to show, the more you actually live. And paradoxically, it is precisely this silence that creates the most powerful network of all, the invisible network, made of people who don't need likes to validate bonds, nor stories to prove friendship. Carl Jung said that authenticity is a path to healing, and authenticity flourishes precisely when there is no stage, no audience, and no pressure to constantly perform. The new invisible network is made up of bonds that cannot be measured by numbers, but only felt in the soul. It is in this space that unhurried conversations emerge, friendships that don't require publication, collaborations that don't need to be displayed. It is in this space that being becomes more important than appearance, and it is in this space that many rediscover a forgotten power, the power of being whole, in silence, connected only by what is real. This invisible network does not require a login, password, or internet connection. It exists wherever two people choose to truly meet. It grows every time someone decides to turn off their cell phone and look into the eyes of the person in front of them. And perhaps deep down this is the network we have always sought, even when we still believed it was inside a screen. But there is still one final decision, perhaps the most difficult of all. Stay or go. Continue feeding the cycle of superficiality, or have the courage to choose authenticity above all else. And it is about this choice that we will talk now, in the next point. There comes a time when every person must make a choice. It's not an easy choice, because it involves giving up something that for years has been part of our daily routine. But it's not an impossible choice either, because deep down, we all feel it when the scales tip towards excess. The final decision is this: to remain trapped in the cycle of superficiality, or to have the courage to break free. And it's not about demonizing social media. They are tools, and like all tools, they can build or destroy. The question is, do you control them, or have you been controlled by them? Many who have decided to leave describe the sensation as being able to breathe again after years underwater. There is no longer an obligation to record every detail of life. There is no longer the invisible weight of comparison. There is no longer the silent demand to always be visible, always active. Time, previously devoured by screens, is now invested in real projects, relationships, and dreams. But this choice requires courage. Courage to deal with silence. Courage to face the initial emptiness that arises when notifications disappear. Courage to rebuild one's own identity without depending on digital approval. And it is precisely in this emptiness that many find what they didn't even know they were looking for. Peace. A peace that doesn't come from likes but from authenticity. A peace that does not depend on filters but on presence. A peace that transforms the way you work, relate, and even how you perceive yourself. So, the final question is inevitable. Are you willing to continue feeding a window that is never satisfied, or will you have the audacity to seek authenticity outside of it? Because in the end, it's not about whether or not to abandon the networks. It's about deciding which side of history you want to be on, the side of endless distraction or the side of real life. And maybe, just maybe, that's the biggest choice of our generation. Social media has changed the world. They transformed the way we communicate, work, and even how we see ourselves. But now, quietly, something new is happening. More and more people are realizing that behind all this connection, there is also a price, and many have decided they are no longer willing to pay it. Leaving the networks is not an escape. It's a return to the essential, to the simple, to the true. It's the chance to discover that happiness doesn't need to be published to exist. That purpose is not born of comparison, but of presence. And that prosperity is not measured in digital numbers, but in inner peace. Ultimately, perhaps we are living at a turning point in history. A time when the greatest form of rebellion is not to shout louder, but to choose silence. It's not about being more visible, but about being more whole. And it's not about seeking followers, but seeking authenticity. Now I leave this reflection with you. Would you have the courage to quit social media today? Or at least rethink the space they occupy in your life? Share your answer in the comments, because this conversation could open the eyes of many people who haven't yet realized the weight they carry. And if this video brought you value, remember to subscribe to the channel, leave your like and activate notifications. This way, you continue to receive content that encourages reflection and helps transform your way of thinking and living. In the end, the choice is yours. Networks can be a prison or a bridge, a distraction or a tool, noise or silence. And perhaps the greatest act of freedom in your life is precisely deciding which of these roles they will have from now on.